Welcome, everybody, to the Beacon of Light podcast tonight. Yesterday, we had a little bit of a break. Honestly, I was just doing bills. So. But tonight, we are back. And today is something really incredible and special. And we have Miss Cheryl Krichbaum to explain a lot of stuff. So before we get into that, we really, really want to get into this. We'll see you guys in just a second. Here we go. I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now. And we're back. Here we are. Well, welcome everybody again to the Beacon of Light, favorite things, and how these amazing people came a part of this, especially part 2, was kind of this high demand as well as what the message is. So tonight you can see down there on the ticker something that's a little bit we can say intense and something that is like, oh, I didn't know that we were going to talk about this tonight. So Cheryl, share with us what's up. How does this roll in?
Well, as our viewers probably know, there was a little bit going on at the Supreme Court today. And I really thought it was a God thing, April, when I realized that we scheduled this for tonight, because that wasn't my thinking when we were trying to figure it out when we were going to do this. But God always knows what he's doing, right?
That's right. He really does. And this scheduling of this tonight with the Supreme Court, share a little bit about what's been going on with this.
All right. So the Supreme Court heard arguments today on the Mississippi case. It's technically Dobbs versus the Jackson Women's Health Organization, I think is what it's called. Which of course is a farce. The Women's Health Organization is an abortion facility. But Mississippi had passed a law that said abortion past 15 weeks was illegal. And then of course they were immediately sued. And it's been taken up through the court system, and the Supreme Court agreed to listen to the argument. And more recently, you've heard about Texas with their 6 weeks. And I'm not a lawyer by any means, but I understand that they're based on two different, the laws were created in different ways. And the Supreme Court did hear some arguments on Texas a few weeks ago, and today they heard arguments on the Mississippi case. And the reason it's such a big deal is because this case could overturn Roe v. Wade, Doe v. Bolton, and the Casey case from 30 years ago, which would then send the decision about abortion rights back to the states. So it doesn't mean that abortion will be eliminated, but it does in the United States, in all the United States, but it does mean that the states would be able to make their own decisions. So you can expect that California, Illinois, New York are all going to continue to have abortion, and are going to be, New York's got abortion all the way to term. But then you're going to see states like Texas and Mississippi that are likely to go pro-life and ban abortion.
Wow, this is really, really one of these moments. And I know as soon as something passes that the other team doesn't like, suits start coming in and all of that. I find it really interesting, this passion about rights without even understanding what the real right is. It just... maybe I'm just simple-minded that way. Maybe I'm a mom of 9. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just saying, it's just kind of so simple in my mind, because life is life. And that's it. The situation, the circumstances, kind of interesting. We were just doing some scripture study, I'm thinking about a particular teenage mom who a lot of people know very well,
Yes.
and not married at the time, not yet,
Mhm.
right? I mean, all of the situations and circumstances very similar to what a lot of people feel like, well, we could just eliminate this. And the sign for abortion, like you're taking and you throw it away.
Mhm.
It's a pretty tough one.
Mhm.
Anyway, talking about this particular teenage mom who
Mhm.
had, I don't know, I call him the savior of the world.
Yeah.
A lot of other people call him that. I just think this idea and the concept of life is so amazing.
Mhm.
Again, the situation, the time, the opportunities, all of these things, we don't have the right to hurt and damage somebody else, because if somebody came into your home and killed you, they don't have the right to do that.
Mhm.
That's, I don't know, called murder.
Mhm.
And so why would one person have the right just because it's smaller?
Mhm.
Again, I'm simplifying this way too much. But Cheryl, Cheryl, you have had some experience very personal with
Very
this. Would you
personal.
like to explain a
Yeah.
little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the first thing that I want to point out is that April and I are friends, and we talk about this subject in a very loving way. And she has been so awesome and so loving and so supportive of me since we met online a few years ago. And so I do want to make it that absolutely clear, because I am post abortive. And what that means is that when I was a teenager, unwed, I was not as brave as Mary was, and I made the wrong choice. And I was one of those people who immediately became hard hearted. I was just saying to my friends today that when a woman has an abortion, she either becomes hard hearted or she becomes depressed. There's really not a whole lot in between. And I was one of those women who became hard hearted. And I was pro choice. I don't know if I would have called myself pro abortion, but I was absolutely for abortion rights, certainly in the first trimester. I volunteered for one of those pro abortion organizations. I'll just put it that way without naming them. And I counter protested the Christians who were protesting around an abortion facility. So I really used to be in the pro-abortion movement. That's who I was. And if Shout Your Abortion, the hashtag, had been a thing back then, we didn't have the internet back then, but if it had been a thing back then, I would have been shouting my abortion. But I have been loved over the lifeline, and I am now pro-life. The Lord has completely healed me, but it took a really long time. It took over 30 years for me to be completely healed. And because I'm completely healed, I can actually be on here and be smiling because I live with joy. But that was not always the case. Matter of fact, the first time I shared my story, I described myself as the Walking Dead. And that was before there was a TV show by that name. So, I described myself as a zombie, just walking through life, doing stuff, but not ever really feeling joy. I was really good at pretending that I was happy, but there wasn't joy, really, and not until just a few years ago. Actually, when I got done with my memoir, was really when I felt complete joy. So I come at this conversation as a convert, as somebody who has personally experienced the devastation of abortion. Um, if you listen to the pro-abortion movement, they say that restricting abortion is misogynistic. And I have a complete opposite opinion. I think abortion is misogynistic. And so the Lord has put me on this path to speak out and speak differently and change the conversation about abortion, equip Christians to be able to speak to the devastation of what abortion does to women. And the reason I focus and talk about women is because that's what the pro-abortion movement does. And they did that today. Their case was all about the harm that will come to women if abortion is restricted. And my response is, but women are harmed by abortion. And even a few men are speaking up and starting to say that they are realizing that they are having a reaction when they participated, when they took their girlfriends to the abortion facility. Their involvement had an emotional impact on them. And a few of them are starting to speak out. So abortion, it doesn't just kill the baby. Absolutely kills the baby. I do consider myself a murderer. I take responsibility for that.
That's heavy right there. Really heavy right there.
But I also know personally that abortion kills our souls, that our vitality is drained away. And more men are starting to speak up and say that that's the same for them as well.
Wow. I don't think there's a lot of statistics on what the men have said, right? Because most men's voices are absolutely silenced because you can't possibly know, you can't possibly understand, so on and so on and so forth. Again, I go back to the simple story, and this time focusing, this always gets me, focusing on Joseph.
Yeah.
He didn't have to stand there. He didn't have to be by her side.
Right.
Making the decision to be with, care for, and step into the role of an earthly father is it's really this humbling, overwhelming feeling for myself. And thinking about if you, I'll say it this way, right? And you know this better than anyone. The focus on the women, the women, the women, the women. Can I raise my hand? I think a guy was there at least for a few minutes. We're just gonna say that, right? So there's a part of this. It's family. What is the unit of God? Family.
Yeah.
Husbands, wives. That is just how biologically everything. That's how it's created. And I am not getting into an argument of who can be a family, who can't be a family.
Right.
I'm just stating that's the fact of biology, really.
Yeah.
And with that, as the men, the boyfriends, partners, whatever, are involved with this, a loss is a loss. Their child has now been lost.
Right.
Can you throw the football with them? Can you
And men are in a lot of different situations. The way the conversation is right now, men are not allowed to speak, and men are criticized for speaking out. What we really need are men who have been involved in abortion and now disagree with it. We need them to speak up. We need pro-life men to mentor other men to be pro-life, right? I mean, women will make a different decision if they know that the man is going to stand up and do his part. A lot of women go into there are groups called I Regret My Abortion, and women who are considering abortion but are questioning will go into these groups and ask questions of those of us who've had abortions. And so many times I read about women whose boyfriend says, you have this abortion or I'm leaving you. Or women who did have the abortion and said, that's what he said to me was, I have to have the abortion. And so I did, and he left me anyway. So to say that men don't have a voice in this is not accurate either.
That's right.
Women are more likely to choose life if the man will stand up and provide and be a father. There are some women who will choose abortion because they're trying to get away from this guy for whatever reason, verbally abusive, physically abusive, or just toxic to her. And if this guy were to stand up and be the manly man who is not abusive, she is more likely to choose life.
Wow. Very,
Yeah,
very impactful. Comes right back to our family, comes right back to, I don't know, again, simple commandment, love one another.
yeah.
I know, I really am not trying to make this light. I guess it's just that awareness of the simplicity is there. Don't complicate it, you silly people. Let's just keep it focused. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, from the pro-abortion movement, the question is, when does life begin? At least that's what they like to say. Some people think that it starts at conception, and if that's what they believe, then a whole lot of their contraception has to go away, because hormonal contraception does not allow a fertilized egg to be implanted into the womb. Some people believe that it begins when the embryo is implanted in the uterus. But then, most of the pro-choice or pro-abortion movement says not until they take the first breath outside of the womb. But then we also have to remember that the outgoing Virginia governor just a few years ago was promoting infanticide, like the baby's born, and then we make a decision whether to keep that baby alive or not. And that was quickly swept under a rug. We had political fact-checking places saying he didn't say that when he did. You could go listen to the WTOP YouTube recording today and listen to it for yourself. So, I mean, the movement has gotten really, really radical all the way to birth and even after birth.
Very, very powerfully true. This concept of the value of our life, it is on such an extreme, right? We have people who will fight for everything to have a child, every kind of, surgeries and all of the frozen
In vitro
IFV, is
fertility.
there in
Yep.
vitro, all of this, because they desire and desire and desire and they're not able to. And we've got the other camp that's like, nope, nope, no, 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 not life, not this, not that. It's a problem. It's a whatever. It's all about you. And you're right. It's such an interesting split
Mm-hmm.
where really, if we could just value life, it was amazing. Amy remembers that. She says, I was horrified when the governor had said that.
Yeah.
It was a moment where we're like, was it what?
Yeah.
So here, right here, breathing.
Yeah.
Just okay. Like, wow, okay, yeah. Don't
Right.
get too far deep into that. It is really, really bizarre because I think about how many of those NICU babies born so early and the fight for their life.
Mm-hmm.
That again, part of that camp, right? I
Mm-hmm.
watched a coworker who delivered a baby at 21 weeks. She has a happy almost 3-year-old now. 21 weeks.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
How about, I mean,
Yeah.
amazing.
It's a God thing. It's
Yeah.
a God thing. And one of the Supreme Court justices today was asking, if not 15 weeks, which is what the Mississippi law says, then what number of weeks can we agree on? And she was picking numbers out of the 20s. Uh, I I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure that we haven't had a baby under 20 weeks that has survived. I don't think 15 weeks is really, really tiny, but we have had babies, like you said, 21 weeks who that have survived, who have survived. So, the justice was asking, okay, if not 15 weeks, is there a number that we can agree on? And of course, the pro-abortion lawyers who were speaking were like, I don't, I'm not. They don't want to agree to any of that because the real motive, the real goal, is to continue to have abortion all the way up to birth without restrictions. As a matter of fact, there is a bill that has already passed the House and is now sitting in the Senate on their calendar. HR 3755, I believe I've got that number correct. They call it the Women's Health Protection Act. As a post-abortive woman, I call it anything but protecting my health. And it is the pro-abortion movement's dream bill that could be signed into law. And our Senate is sitting at 50-50 when we're looking at political parties. I don't know where we sit on pro-life versus pro-choice, but political parties were sitting 50-50. And if the vote were to be 50-50, it would go to our vice president, and that she's going to sign it and say yes and sign it off to the president for it to become law. So even if SCOTUS takes this case and renders a decision that overturns Roe v. Wade, Doe v. Bolton, and the Casey case, and sends it back to the states, there is the potential for a federal law that legalizes abortion without restriction all the way up to birth. They covered everything. So, April, you have kids. If your daughter, who is a minor, per this law, she can have an abortion without you ever knowing it. So parental rights are covered. There's a whole section about abortion providers. I was trying to decide which word to use. Allows abortion providers. It talks about commerce. I mean, this was in the Commerce Committee in the House. Commerce, right? I mean, it's just so obvious that abortion is an industry. It's a money-making industry. And from my perspective, as a woman who has been faced with an unplanned pregnancy, who was scared, whose family was already under a whole lot of stress, and I was heading into my senior year in high school. I was at the top of my class. I was concerned about graduating. I was concerned about getting into the college of my dreams. I was in a state of fear. And what does the abortion industry say? Oh, you don't have to worry about that. You just have an abortion. It won't be any big deal. And they make money. And then I got to go figure out how to deal with the emotional consequences. And for some women, the physical consequences. So, a lot of what happened in the late 60s, early 70s that led to the legalization, that led to Roe. It led to New York legalizing abortion in 1970, 3 years before Roe, was this back alley abortion argument. But what we fail to hear in the media is that women are dying today in legal abortion facilities. And notice that I'm purposely not using the word clinic. Clinic is where you go for health care. A facility is different. And so I'm being very purposeful in changing my wording. And so I encourage all of you to do that as well. Don't call it a clinic. It's not a clinic. It's an abortion facility. And in some states like mine, we've changed the laws in the last couple of years, and it no longer has to be a doctor who performs the abortion. In my state, it can be a nurse practitioner. According to this law, it could be practically anybody. And I do not understand why we think that that's healthcare. If we have to go to see a doctor for a DNC after a miscarriage, if we have to go to a doctor to have any sort of surgery done on any part of our female parts, why is it that we would go to somebody less qualified for an abortion?
No idea. Oh, well, yes, we do have the idea. The answer is we want to have this power, this control, your rights, money. All of this ties back into that. The industry,
Mm-hmm.
very powerfully said, the industry, when you combine power with the backing of the dollar,
Mm-hmm.
very tough to put that down, no matter the morality of it, because the immorality of the power and the money corrupts all. And
Right.
it's
And so on that note, let's have a little history lesson.
history. Ba-bum.
All right. So you probably know that Margaret Sanger was the person who started Planned Parenthood. You can get this history on my website, by the way, which is
Let's pop that up there.
mybodyMyworship.com.
Okay, wait. I'm so into this. Okay, there we go. It's right there.
All
Right
right.
there.
So you can go get the history on my website. So Margaret Sanger started what became Planned Parenthood in 1916 in Brooklyn, New York. And she was, quote unquote, serving the African American community. She was a eugenist, as in she wanted to control population of African Americans. So fast forward to 1960, and that's when contraception became more widely marketed. It wasn't legal in all 50 states. That wasn't until the mid-60s that it became legal. Margaret Sanger passed away in 1966, and it was the very end of the 60s. I don't know an exact date, so I don't know if 68 or 69, but I know it was the end of the 60s that a group was created called NARAL, N-A-R-A-L. And what that stands for has changed over the years. You can look it up really easily. And NARAL was created to get abortion legalized, starting in the state of New York. And I'm telling you this history from one of the founders, Dr. Bernard Nathanson. Here, I can show you his book. Dr. Bernard Nathanson. He was an OBGYN who was delivering babies, and he was also working in the ER and taking care of women who had botched abortions, either because they did abortions themselves or the abortion facilities. And so he was really concerned about women's health, and that's why he got into this. His partner, not so much. But that's why he got into it. And they hired a marketing company, and the marketing company said, so what are the numbers of women who are dying from quote unquote back alley abortions? And so he gave them the number, and they said, that's way too low. Nobody's going to listen to you. And they went away, and he went, okay, I'm going to inflate the numbers, see what happens. So he did. Dr. Bernard Nathanson inflated the numbers, and none of the reporters checked his numbers. And they reported it over and over and over again until it became fact, right? Everybody's quoting each other. So the numbers were made up, they were inflated. Meanwhile, he went to abortion facilities and helped them clean up and become better, cleaner places so that fewer women were dying. And then they also created a marketing attack on Catholics. And I'm a lifelong Protestant. My family, I mean, a long, long history of Protestants, right? And I am ashamed that the Protestants don't stand with our Catholic sisters and brothers. But they had a very purposeful attack on Catholicism, and they were the vocal ones for life, and they were successful. And they even invited Planned Parenthood to join them in their lobbying to get this law passed in New York. And Planned Parenthood, interestingly, turned them down. And there is actually evidence that Planned Parenthood did not believe in abortion, but then the law was passed, and New York set it up such that you didn't have to be a New York resident. It was open to anybody. And so all sorts of women flooded into New York for abortions. And, we know from Super Bowl parties, the reason that you have the Super Bowl party in your city is because people are going to come to your city and they're going to spend money, right? They're going to spend money at the hotels. They're going to buy gas there. They're going to buy food, everything. So it was good for commerce for New York to legalize abortion. And Planned Parenthood saw this and they went, okay, we're on board. They literally got into the abortion business because of the money. And that's reported by Dr. Nathanson himself. And the reason he was willing to share this is because he became pro-life. And now keep in mind that in the 1960s, he was an atheist. He's Jewish by birth, but didn't believe in God. And the ultrasound machine, although it existed, was not widely available until the mid-70s, until after Roe v. Wade. And he saw a preborn baby using the ultrasound machine, and he was like, I've been telling everybody it's a blob of cells, and it's not. That baby moved. You can see that the baby is a baby. And he was literally shocked by what he saw on the ultrasound machine. And as a result, he ended up making a video, that's what we would call it today, called The Silent Scream. You can find it on YouTube today. It's all over the place, The Silent Scream, which showed how a baby reacts in the process of suction abortion, vacuum aspiration abortion. So he became pro-life because of what he saw in the ultrasound machine. And then later, he converted to Catholicism. And what I didn't realize until just a few years ago, when my friend and now editor started educating me, she's Catholic, the Catholic Church has quite the network of information. They have just tons of books, audio recordings. They have people who go out on the Catholic speaking lecture circuit to educate other Catholics. And so this is what he did. He went and spoke and told his story to any Catholics that would have him, any churches that would have him. And so she lent me a recording of one of his presentations, and he has, of course, since passed away. So he's not around today to tell his story. But there are audio recordings, and then he's written a couple books as well telling his story. And it's a story of remorse. He thought he was doing the right thing by women, and then later, because of the ultrasound machine, realized that what he did was horribly, horribly wrong, and deeply, deeply regretted his all the work that he did to promote abortion. And so I point a number of things out here. One, we don't know if Margaret Sanger was actually pro-abortion. There's evidence to indicate that she wasn't. But she was a eugenist. And this whole population control argument that pops up every now and then comes from the 1960s. And what was going on in the 1960s but the civil rights movement? So whose population do you think they're trying to control?
The African Americans, because they want the rights and these kinds of things. Well, that power and control, that's not going to happen. We're going to keep this suppressed and down as much as possible because that's the best way for myself. Oh, wait, not for all of humanity, but just for myself.
Right. Yeah. And today, the African American population has stagnated. It's kind of in a straight line, even going down. In New York City, there are more African American babies aborted than born alive. And it's so it's such a huge issue. Women's Health Protection Act, it covers everything, including race. And, it's saying that abortion has not been accessible by women of color. And one of my friends, who's African American, was just like blowing up, like, that's never been the case. There are so many untruths that are out in the mainstream media about abortion. And that's why I'm here, is to expose all this stuff, to change the conversation, get Christians to think differently about this, because, I truly believe the Lord allowed me to go through a number of things so that I could speak out in the way that He's called me to speak out. So one of the experiences that I had was when I first shared my story in front of a couple hundred Christians. I didn't get very much reaction. Like, one person came up and talked to me afterwards, and that was one of the pastors, and there were half a dozen pastors. So one pastor out of 6 and one person out of 200 came up and talked to me. Fast forward, and I don't know, a couple years later, I presented it again, once again in front of a couple hundred people, all women this time. And they shook the hands of the other speakers at the event, but they bypassed me. And today I know that they just didn't know what to say. If you're entrenched in pro-life and all that you hear from about pro-life, you don't know what to do with a woman who's chosen abortion. And I get that today. But at the time, I was really hurt. So today I call it the Christian cold shoulder. But I do know that it's not, for most people, it's not purposeful. But what I really feel like the Lord is telling me to do is to help Christians understand the complexity of this issue and how to reach out to women, and to let them know about all sorts of resources that are available. Because there are a couple things. So you helped me come up with the title for my book. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I love giving you credit for that. April reached out to me when I was like, I don't know what to call this thing, and she helped me figure it out. So my friends who read my book, I had one friend who said, I thought women just went and had abortions. It didn't occur to me that you'd be going through all of these difficult things that you were going through. And I had to kind of stop and chuckle at that, because most women are in some sort of crisis, and they're making this decision out of fear, usually fear that's money related. Abortion rate among the poorest of the poor is higher than any other economic status. But if you've been pro-life your whole life and that's all you've ever heard, you probably didn't realize that was the case. So, to bring to light that there are other things going on. And, most abortions are by women who are unmarried. Well, there's usually something going on that makes us go have sex outside of marriage as well. And for me, I was looking for love because I accidentally became the neglected child at home because my family was going through so much very difficult situation. And so, no, not trying to blame anybody at all, because it really was a mess, which you can read about in the book. But, that's, nobody's going to have the situation I had, I doubt. But there's so much going on in our homes that people don't know about. And so we're going and looking for love elsewhere. We're looking for the agape love that we would get from God if we were to seek it out, but we're settling for eros love, for that the Greek word eros that gets translated into English for love is the basis for erotic love. It's just sex. And we don't realize that there's a difference. And so there's a ton of work to do. A ton of work to do. And so I really want to equip Christians and get them to think beyond the laws, by the way, because even if abortion becomes illegal in all 50 states, let's say Roe v. Wade is overturned and this law never passes, and somebody comes up with a pro-life law making it illegal to have abortion in all 50 states. That's a long shot, but let's say that happens. All right. That doesn't mean abortion's going to end. We'll have a whole new illegal drug trade because so many women are having abortions via medicine, quote unquote. We're still going to have abortion as an issue. And this really became clear to me several years ago when I went to Uganda, one of the countries in Africa. And that's where God really caught me and said, hey, you're going to speak out on this. To which I went, I don't want to. But anyway, while I was there, I was asking all sorts of questions about abortion. And it's illegal there, but it still happens. And happens much more so in the poorest of the poor communities than anywhere else. And so, and we've seen this, and that's a pro-abortion argument too, is let's at least keep it safe. And it's like, well, you're making some assumptions there that it is safe, because it's not. You're just not hearing about it. And even when it's out, oh my goodness, we had a movie before Abby Johnson's movie Unplanned came out. A movie came out called Gosnell, Gosnell. Gosnell was an abortion doctor who killed babies even though they were born alive. And there was at least one woman who died on his table. He was performing abortions later term than what his state allowed. His facility was absolutely gross and disgusting. And the health department wouldn't do anything about it. And so there really is unsafe, gross, disgusting, not healthcare stuff happening in the abortion industry. But it's being completely ignored, swept under the rug. People don't know about it. And so I'm just out to expose the truth about all of these things.
And part of this truth, what we can do within ourselves is to teach, show, understand what it is that we're all born with this innate desire to be together, to be with one another, to have sex, because it does lead to children, but it's within the proper restraints and understanding of this. And so the education of that is really important. I'm probably not the one on TikTok, probably not that one. Okay, anyway, it's just saying. So really, this is a family responsibility, because as a family, we need to be teaching, helping, and going for. And if a challenge happens, if mistakes have happened, if sex out of wedlock has happened, let's see, shame. Yeah, that works great. Oh wait, no. Blame and kick him out. Oh wait, okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I forgot. Maybe love. Maybe discovering, finding out, and the stopping of the shaming and looking at things, because that will help eliminate and pull down the fear before a drastic decision is happening that impacts them, which you have experienced and shared with for a lifetime. I think about this, and again, not to be simple, but women who miscarry.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The grief that happens. The abort. Oh, yeah, okay. Let's go get some chips. Like, it's just it's so I can't even understand the difference there, because the mourning, the sadness, the up and down emotion, the hormones, the everything that happens when you lose a child, whether it happened because of a miscarriage or because of abortion, the loss is there. The body is going to suffer. The spirit is going to suffer. If you made a choice, I think that compounds that suffering versus maybe
Yeah.
it just wasn't, implanted correctly and whatever, and it passed forward. The idea is that life has been lost, right? And so we need to keep that focus. We need to also have the conversation as much as possible with our kids, with our family,
Mm-hmm.
so that they know, and just have the conversations. It's not hush hush, but if you talk about these things and really teach and understand as best as you can and grab things together as a family, they will understand that life is important and that life is really the way, and the fear stops, right? We know that the biggest liar, huh, he
Mm-hmm.
uses fear quite a bit, right? And so we
Yes.
have to kind of pare it down to know, wait a minute, am I scared and am I freaked out about something? Those feelings are coming from somewhere else. What can
Right.
I do to help and ask for support with that? So as
Mm-hmm.
Christians, let's be that supportive and not judging. And oh, not on my watch. No, no, honey, we're on everybody's watches. I'm
Right.
pretty sure there's that other scripture, brother's keeper or something like that. Yeah, maybe we're a brother's warden at this moment in time. Like, we
Right.
really need to help and give supports. So
Right.
your books, your worship to end abortion, all of these things are
Mm-hmm.
there to give us this idea, to give us the impact, to know what it is that we can do. We can pray, we can be directed, we can maybe say the right thing at the right time. Maybe we are that person that helps to lead people to your resources so that they get the information and see the other side and make healthier and better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
We all have a part to play in this because we are all of one
Mm-hmm.
family.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
just the thing to do. So if that
Absolutely.
means you feel in your calling to increase money towards people who want to be placed, but like the adoption agency and all of
Mm-hmm.
that, fine, because maybe the situation is she cannot raise the child but wants to give the child life, and so you end up putting money towards that to help and aid and make sure the baby is healthy so that it can go to another living
Mm-hmm.
family. If you decide to keep and raise on your own with a supportive, if the man stands up and helps all together, that should be supported. There's so many options, and there's not a either or, there's a how and where can we help, and the
Mm-hmm.
love. If we fill that with love, the opportunity for more children to come here opens
Mm-hmm.
greatly.
Right. Absolutely. And so, there's multiple things that you've brought up. One is, as a parent, avoid saying, if you get pregnant, don't come back here. Because oh, she's going to choose her family, right? And she's scared about losing her family. So she's going to go have an abortion. That's not stopping her from getting pregnant. That's encouraging her to get an abortion if she does get pregnant. All right. And so lots of women have chosen abortion for fear of going home to mom and dad. There are plenty of women who've been taken to the abortion facility by mom and dad, Christians even. All right. But then there's also not getting pregnant in the first place. And we need to be careful not to rely on the sex education programs in our schools. Depending on what state you're in, that may actually be curriculum created by Planned Parenthood or promoted by Planned Parenthood. Oops, I said the words. They and they're more about sex than they are about preventing sex. And as a result, I offer a sex education program, which I honestly never in my life thought that I would do. But my but my academic education is in scientific and technical communication. I know how to do the research and I know how to compile it and get it together for my audience. And so that's what I've done. So when I go over contraception, I go over it in a totally different way than what your kids will get it in school. When I talk about uh, just the act of having sex, whether it's same-sex marriage or not marriage, same-sex or heterosexual sex, there's stuff that happens in your brain. We've got all sorts of neuroscience research now that talks about what happens in your brain. And that also affects pornography and sharing pictures via text messaging. And what we're looking at on social media and what we're even looking at in magazines and posters, and is any of that stuff real? These are all these things that I cover from a scientific perspective, but also bringing it back to Scripture. So Scripture doesn't give us the science because they didn't have the science that we have today. But God does talk about all these things. We just need to look for it. And so I bring all these things together, and that's one of my offers tonight. I call my courses the Missing Sex Ed Lessons. And if you use the coupon that April published on her blog today, you'll get half off. And it's about 10 hours. You watch it in the privacy of your own home. It's all pre-recorded videos with resources added in there, links to resources. You can, if you're a homeschooler and you want to make it work for credit, you can do that. You can have them read some of the resource books in there, write book reports or position papers or anything like that. Or you can just say we're doing this in addition to what we're doing at public or private school, or instead of. Some people opt their kids out of sex education at their schools, and some private schools don't offer sex education and say it's the parents' responsibility. And then I do have people who are like, no, I want to be the one teaching my kids sex education. And I said, okay, then you parents need to go take this course, because there's information in here that I didn't know existed until a few years ago. So there's a ton. We need to be educated so that we can educate the people around us, whether it's the kids that live in our house, or if we are working with young adults, 20 and 30 something unmarrieds at church, whatever the case may be, we need to be educated so that we can speak the truth in talking to people who are literally making life and death decisions.
That's right. So you got the information there. Thank you so much, Cheryl. This has been a fascinating conversation. Let's see what's going to happen tonight, and with all of the information coming out. And go there to mybodymyworship.com and see how you can be touched, pray about things to know what it is that you can help with the conversation to keep life living.
Yeah.
Just keep it that simple. Thank you again, and we will see you all later. Have a good one. Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
for having me.